Atomic Heart was one of the early Posterchild games showcasing ray tracing and ray tracing demos. However, it launched last night on PC without ray tracing, which surprised a lot of people given all of the RTX trailers showing off ray tracing in the game. Now, it does have DLSS 3 and frame generation, so that's interesting. But yeah, I just double checked and it was going back to even August of 2018. You could find articles about the real-time ray tracing in Atomic Heart. Now, if you've seen some demos of the ray tracing in this game on launch, you're watching probably a pirated version of the game. I believe there's a developer build of the game that's floating around that does have ray tracing enabled, but the release version of the game, which by the way is a Game Pass Day 1 game, so if you have PC Game Pass, you would not need to drop a large amount of money to try this game out. I'm hearing a lot of mixed reviews of the game. Some people absolutely loving it and praising the performance. Some people less excited about it. Anyway, are you guys interested in me testing it out on the channel if I have time? Let's move on though. If you're interested in upcoming Nvidia GPUs, maybe something a little more affordable than the 4070 Ti, 4080, and 4090, we might hear about it at GTC. Now, to be clear here, GTC on March 21st at 8 a.m., we will get a keynote from Jensen. Now, there is no confirmation from Nvidia that this will be talking about any new graphics cards. However, with the rumors of the RTX 4070 going on sale in April, it would make sense that a late March opportunity like GTC could feature some discussion of that product, but that's all we know for now. Now, how about from AMD? There's an interesting interview that's, well, not in English, but you could either machine learning translate this, or you could look into articles reporting on it with some of it translated that talk quite a bit about some interesting ideas for where AMD's going in the future. Now, the part of this that I wanted to actually kind of make one of my features today is talking about, a lot of people are interested in, okay, is AMD ever going to put more emphasis on the AI side of things in their graphics cards, the way Intel and Nvidia are with their Tensor cores and, DLSS using, the Tensor core acceleration, that kind of a thing. Well, when asked directly about that, let's just look at the response. So we think that that what should be done with the inference accelerator installed on the GPU should not be limited to utilization centered on image processing, represented by NVIDIA's DLSS. They point out that if you look at FSR's anti-aliasing and super-resolution processing realized without using an inference accelerator provide performance and quality that can fully compete with NVIDIA's DLSS. Now, I will say that I think it's getting very, very close to DLSS. I think it's a good competitor. I will still give DLSS the edge in most cases, especially as the input resolution is lower. However, they are doing a good job competing without using that tech. I will give them that. Anyway, they're saying that the reason why NVIDIA is actively trying to use AI technology, even for applications that could be done without using AI technology, is that NVIDIA has installed a large-scale inference accelerator in the GPU. So in order to make effective use of it, it seems that they are working on a theme that needs to mobilize many inference accelerators. That's their GPU strategy, which is great, but I don't think we should have the same strategy. So right there, that's kind of a big deal. So AMD is basically saying, look, NVIDIA has decided to take up a large part of their GPU with AI inference accelerators, right? So they sure as heck better find something for those to do while you're gaming, or else it's wasted space. So AMD is claiming that NVIDIA is doing things with that because they need to make use of it that could be done without it. I guess that's what they're saying. And they are not feeling like that same strategy would make sense for AMD. Now, it does look like Intel has followed more of the NVIDIA path down that road. Anyway, AMD is now saying we are focused on including the specs that users want and need to give them enjoyment in consumer GPUs. Otherwise, users are paying for features that they never use. We believe that inference accelerators that should be implemented in gamers' GPUs should be used to make games more advanced and fun. So that's interesting. So they're basically saying the AI, image processing like DLSS, they think is a wasted use of that kind of tech, isn't something that they're interested in. They'd rather stuff on a GPU be used to make games more advanced and fun. Now, what do they mean by that? Well, he moves on with, for example, the movement and behavior of enemy characters and NPCs are probably the most obvious examples. So thinking about actually using the AI accelerators on GPUs to accelerate AI behavior in games. I mean, interesting thought. Also, even if AI is used for image processing, AI should be in charge of more advanced processing, specifically a theme such as neural graphics, which is certainly currently, I can speak, gaining momentum in the 3D graphics industry may be appropriate. So I thought that was pretty interesting, just to see what AMD's response to that is, because I think a lot of people maybe expected RDNA 3 to bring in more machine learning tech, maybe have an AI accelerated FSR algorithm, that kind of thing, and they didn't. So it's interesting to hear their take on that. Now, also, they do talk about the future here, a little bit about RDNA 4. So they're saying in recent years, Samsung Electronics SoC Exynos 2200 has entered the smartphone field by providing RDNA 2-based GPU IP cores. In addition, AMD's GPUs have been provided to electric vehicle maker Tesla for Model S and Model X and vehicle systems. It is a foray into new fields, and we will continue to develop GPUs that will not betray the expectations of gamers. So they're talking about how they have moved into other spaces, beyond just and also in gaming consoles and all that, obviously, that they've done for a long time. But they're saying they're not going to develop the expectations of gamers on that. And they do mention, RDNA 4 expecting to come soon, but they didn't give a date or anything on that. So interesting article. You could feel free to read more. I felt like that AI piece was the most interesting to highlight for you. And now we're seeing a tweet from Momomo US, hardware leaker, saying X3D 27. Now, what's that probably about? So we already know the X3D desktop CPUs, which are expected to be very good for gaming, are coming out on the 28th. So if he's tweeting a 27 here, I think that would mean that we would be expecting the review embargo to lift on the 27th, and we should see more about that. Now, it's looking like these are already out in reviewers' hands, because in articles like this one at videocards.com, we're seeing leaked benchmark results for the 7950 X3D. We're seeing some Geekbench 5 performance, where you can actually see it performing a little bit worse than the 7950X non-3D, but that would be expected in a task that is not cache sensitive. Remember, the whole point of the X3D chips is that they get you more cache, but they can actually have to clock lower because of that additional cache. So that would mean that in certain tasks, it might actually have this slightly worse performance like we're seeing here. But in other tasks, like many games, we should see increased performance. We'll have to wait on the reviews. It's looking like there's also some leaked performance on SI software. Is that how you pronounce that? And then also on, I believe this is a Blender result. But again, it looks like, according to Momomo, we will be getting full reviews probably on the 27th. Now, in preparation for this, some motherboard vendors are already rolling out firmware for their motherboards that should have 7000 X3D support, including a GISA 1.005 BIOS firmware. It's looking like, according to this WCCF Tech article, that some motherboards have this out, but many don't yet. Looking like Asrock is the first. Looks like Asus might have a new beta BIOS out as well, according to that tweet. But not every motherboard vendor has those available yet. Now, on the laptop side of AMD CPUs, we're seeing the Ryzen 7045 Dragon Range getting new performance claims. So AMD has released new marketing materials, as reported by videocards.com here, showing off the performance of their Dragon Range laptops. So Dragon Range are the ones that are basically using desktop parts in the laptop form factor and could go up to some pretty significant power draw. They're showing off the performance versus Intel's 12 series CPUs. So do keep in mind it's not versus their 13 series, which are kind of on their way into the market at the moment as well. Now AMD is claiming 2%. Now responsiveness is a weird way of saying single-threaded performance. And then multitasking would be your multi-threaded performance. They're using Cinebench R23 single-thread and multi-thread numbers here, showing versus a 12900HX, a 2% single-thread lead and 52% multitasking lead. The 7745 versus the 12700H, they're showing 6% single-threaded lead and 25% in multi-threading. And their 7645HX, they're putting up against a 12500H. Showing 7% single thread and 9% multitasking lead, and again, up twos, you know, for your normal marketing speak. Now, it is probably worth mentioning that the Intel laptops were using DDR5 4800 memory, whereas the AMD laptops were using DDR5 5200 memory. Although I think that's somewhat fair, although worth noting, because the laptops themselves for those Intel laptops would have probably come with that DDR5 4800 JetX standard, whereas the AMD would have the 5200 standard. So when you're buying a laptop, it's less like a desktop where you're likely to be swapping out things like that, although, you know, on some laptops you can swap out the memory. But anyway, just pointing that out. Anyway, we'll see what happens here. I'm more interested in the desktop space myself, but I thought I'd bring those out here. Now let's get into some interesting GPU news. So I found this on Our Hardware, and apparently the post is taking the source from Mind Factory, which is one of the few retailers who actually publish detailed sales figures. And so taking those numbers for February of 2020 versus February of 2023, look at the average sale price differences. In 2020, the average sale price was $295 for AMD and $427 for Nvidia, whereas in 2023 February, the average sale price for AMD is $600 and Nvidia is $825.2. Both of those almost just about doubling from 2020. And the revenue numbers have also gone up considerably. Now, this isn't the entire GPU market, this is just Mind Factory's numbers, but I thought those were some interesting stats to take a look at, especially that average sale price of GPUs going up so significantly. Now, in China, so we see GPU shipments declining by 42%, with Colorful being the top AIB supplier. This is apparently coming from board channels, although reported here by WCCFtech.com. So yeah, and I think that's declining year on year here. So big decline compared to last year. Now we're also seeing reported to be careful if you're buying an RTX 20 series GPU on AliExpress, because some of them have painted memory dies to fool consumers. Why would you want to paint the memory dies? Well, when the 2080 Ti originally launched, there were some of them with bad memory. So there were some memory issues, as reported here, on certain on certain Hynix chips, I believe it was. But the point is that this WCCF Tech article is pointing out something coming from this YouTube video, which is basically uncovering that some 2080 Ti's are being painted over to make it look like they don't have the bad memory, but they do. So just keep your eye out on the used market, because again, you can find better deals on the used market, but you just want to be very careful of what you're getting and taking a close look at it to make sure you got what you expected to get. Now, in other laptop news, this time looking at GPUs, RTX 4070 laptop GPU reported to be only 11% to 15% faster than the RTX 3070. Now, where is this information coming from? It's coming from MechRevo, which I think in their advertising materials, now don't look at the size of these bars. As a math teacher, this is infuriating to me, because if that's 100%, this is not 125%. But if we trust the numbers rather than the size of the bars, they are claiming that their 3D Mark scores for their 4070 is 15% higher than their 3070, and their 3D Mark FS score, so Firestrike score, is 11% faster compared to with the 4070 compared to the 3070. 4060 versus 3060, they're showing a 30% gain, and in Firestrike, and 25% in TimeSpy. Now, this isn't a full review, but this is a laptop company posting their numbers. So interesting stat. We'll see what happens in full reviews. I think those reviews should be out soon. Now, AMD's Radeon RX 6000 RDNA 2 GPUs are reported to get up to 40% ray tracing performance boost and 3D Mark DXR scores with the latest driver that came out recently. Now, I wanted to try to verify some of this myself, and I've got to caution you guys. I seem to be one of the apparently many people who kind of bricked their Windows install by updating to the 23.2.1 drivers. I'm not saying this as a, I'm just reporting the news. So after I updated to those drivers, I initially was able to boot my PC, but a couple of boots later, I was, as soon as I would get to my login screen, it would blue screen. It would give me a few different reports. I was not seeing the inaccessible boot device report that other people seem to be reporting more frequently. But it was very soon after doing this driver update where I started to have this issue, and I ended up having to reset my Windows. There might have been some easier way to solve the problem, but I tried a few things, and it was just my test bench, so all I had on there was games anyway, so I just reset the PC, but it looks like there are a lot of people reporting issues being able to not boot their PC after the 23.2.1 driver update. So I'm just throwing that out there that I am actually one of those people. Now, I do want to caution and say I didn't troubleshoot. I haven't tried reinstalling that driver yet to see if I have the same problem. I can't 100% guarantee that this is what caused my problem, but it's the only major change I made to the PC. And this does seem to be, which then went to I then immediately started having this problem. So yeah, just throwing that out there. A little bit careful on that one possibly. Now, don't cross the streams. Bust more ghosts with source code for Fidelity FX Super Resolution 2.2. So Fidelity FX Super Resolution, FSR 2.2, did come out a while ago, but the source code is now available on GitHub, and this is the GPU open post discussing it. There were some interesting changes with FSR 2.2. A lot of it was reducing the fizzing on disocclusions and locking down some more ghosting and things like that. But anyway, the source code is now out and about. It looks like Gigabyte is preparing a water-cooled 4090 Aorus gaming box. So this is an external GPU enclosure, looks like with water cooling for 4090 GPUs. So interesting, thought I'd throw that out there if that's something any of you would be interested in. I think, some people are interested in the external GPUs, not my thing, but it seems kind of neat. Now, Gigabyte is also launching an RTX 4090 Aero OC with a white design, so silver white design here. Looks nice if you're going for a white build, although if you're going for a white build, Yeston, if you're into more of the anime styling here, one advantage that they've gone with is this appears to be the only one with a white PCB. So they actually went with a white PCB on this one. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and take a look. This appears to be a 4080 model. And in other news, although I think this is just the Chinese market, we're getting the 7900 XT Starry Sky model shown off by Vastermore. But again, I believe this is really targeting the Chinese market, but there's what that one looks like, if that applies to you at all. Now, in other laptop processor news, we're seeing AMD's Ryzen 7730U showing up on Passmark. And why is it basically the same as a Ryzen 7 5825U? I'm mainly reporting on this just to once again highlight that I hate that AMD moved to the Ryzen 7000 naming scheme, also applying to previous generation processors. So if you look at this third number and it's a 3, then it's Zen 3, not Zen 4. It's basically the same CPU you could already get, but with that 7 in front, it kind of feels like a newer generation. So just a reminder here that when you're looking at the CPU generation, you're looking at the third number on these, and some Ryzen 7000s are actually Zen 2 architecture and Zen 3 architecture, and it's only with that 4 there where you're actually getting Zen 4 architecture. And anyway, if you're interested in the actual numbers here, the 5825U and the 7730U were reporting very, very similar performance, slightly faster on that 7730U. So anyway, just keep in mind on those numbering schemes. Now we are seeing the Ryzen 7 7745HX 8-core Zen 4 CPU showing up as 34% faster than the 6900HX in Cinebench R23. And this is one of those Dragon range processors, although not the highest end one. We're seeing a screenshot of the R23 numbers. This is reported by videocards.com, and you can see how that stacks up against something like the Core i9 12950HX. This is looking basically tied slightly faster in single thread performance, a little bit slower in multi-threading, but again, this is not the highest end Dragon range chip, and this is quite a bit faster than the 6900HX previous generation. Now, if you've been following the more threads GPUs coming out in China, I would still definitely not recommend buying them for gaming, but I am going to report that apparently they are working on the software support, and they have doubled game support to 42 titles with their latest GPU drivers. So apparently this is the new game support list, and so that's at least nice to see them adding in some more games. So I mean, it's headed in the right direction. But again, I really don't think it's something that anybody should be wanting to buy at this moment. Now, Asrock has apparently launched a add-in card. This is not a GPU. This is an M.2 PCIe 5.0 SSD card where you can fit 4 of these. Is there not a picture of the... Well, anyway, they fit diagonally like this along there. And then there's some cooling over the top of it. So anyway, if you need a whole lot of M.2s installed, you could look into leveraging your PCIe interface with that add-in card. Intel did get a new graphics driver out. This was mainly to support games like Atomic Heart and Wild Hearts, as well as Company of Heroes 3 and Settlers New Allies and Like a Dragon Ishin. So nice to see Intel getting that day one support out there. Now, speaking of Wild Hearts, I didn't cover this one, but there's been terrible performance issues on PC. Now, I do want to mention this very strange sounding workaround, but it's reported as actually helping. What is this performance workaround? Apparently, if you change the audio settings from stereo to surround sound, 7.1, 5.1, apparently performance improves considerably. I haven't tested this out myself, but that seems like a bizarre thing to cause issues, but apparently it does. Now, I'll also mention as a quick ending bit here, Apple has reportedly secured the entire TSMC N3 node supply, at least that initial bit, for their upcoming A17 and M3 SoCs. And I might as well also report on a little bit of other Apple-related news. So a lot of the new GPUs are one of the big features is the AV1 encoding. Now, Apple's Safari browser up until now has not supported AV1, but it's looking like AV1 is now supported in the newest release notes for Safari 6.4 beta release, with some hardware support for AV1 decoding. Anyway, so that's good to see, although my understanding of Apple's own silicon is that there is no hardware-accelerated AV1 encode or decode. And also might as well throw in a last little bit of Apple-related news. It looks like Microsoft is going to support Windows 11 on Apple M1 and M2 Macs, but only through Parallels. And this is a virtualized ARM version of Windows. So, a lot of caveats there. I hope all of you have an excellent day.